doing? You good? You good? All right, that was funnier in my head. Welcome. This is my office. Cool. Today I'm gonna go over some of the things that I regret when I was outlining my first ever novel, which is still being written, but that's okay. Okay, so maybe I should have tested to make sure that the mic is working. Fingers crossed. We'll find out. I might regret that. Speaking of regrets. We have to have disclaimers, obviously. I do not regret starting to write a novel. That's without question. Also, hindsight is 2020. I also don't think that I'm ever going to perfect my writing process. I think that this is forever something that will be ever changing because we're always growing, we're always learning, there's always new potential processes that we could take. And that's part of the fun, is growing and changing and leaning into new things that inspire us, that we've come across in our learning journey as hobby authors. Some of the things, they worked at the time, but I'm at a place now as a level 2 writer where I can see that those things worked as a level 1 writer, but now that I have a little bit more knowledge and I can kind of analyze things a little bit better because I have a little bit more experience, I can see what would have worked better, what's more feasible, and with more knowledge as a hobby author. That being said, in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years from now, I could be reviewing this video laughing at the things that I was worried about or the things that I had judged myself for in my first ever attempt at writing. So if anything, this video is kind of an opportunity for me to track my progress, track the things, those level 1 author worries, and see how I can improve over time and not forget the things that I want to improve on. So here are 3 main things that I regret when outlining and brainstorming my first ever novel. I regret not looking into more ways to outline a novel. Abby Emmons is incredible. I will die on that hill. That being said, Abby Emmons writes contemporary cozy novels, and I'm writing a fantasy romance novel, romantasy, and that the 3-act story structure, which is something that she pushes as her die-hard outlining process, it's incredible, it's very good. I'm still using it, I will keep using it. As I mentioned in my outlining and brainstorming video, which if you have not watched, I would highly recommend you watch, gives you a little bit more context into my situation. The problem that I'm finding with the 3-act story structure is that in some cases, for my particular genre, some of those story beats are a little bit more difficult to fill in. And maybe that's because I'm a level 2 writer. Full stop. That being said, maybe it's because I'm using an outlining process that has an excess or has a different style of story beat that is not necessarily a good fit for this genre. How would I know if I didn't look it up? And I regret not looking it up. There are so many different ways that you can outline a novel. There's Save the Cat, super popular online. You could try Brandon Sanderson's 9-step outlining process. You could do Jeb Hearn's hourglass method. There's a 7-point story structure. Essentially what I'm saying is maybe the story structure that I'm using to outline my fantasy romance novel book is not necessarily the one that's going to bring me the story of my dreams. That's so lame. The 3-act story structure, I'm using it. In the future, when I start to write something else, my plan is definitely to branch out, to do a little bit more research and see what other options I have out there that might resonate with me better, because I've experienced the 3-act story structure, and if we're not growing and learning if we don't try anything new. Regret number 2. I regret not giving myself a little bit more structure. And I'm not talking 3-act story structure. I'm talking scheduling my own writing time. This is a hobby, right? So I've just been doing this whenever the mood strikes. That's totally fine. That prevents burnout. That increases enjoyment. Of course, you want to write when you feel inspired, because in theory, you're more efficient when you're inspired. You're going to enter that flow state. You're going to get really creative when you're inspired. Having the cue that naturally develops from doing something consistently helps as well. And that can fuel your fire and keep you on the right page when it comes to writing or whatever hobby that you're doing. Something that's naturally developed, a cue for me, is songs. There's certain playlists that I play when I start writing, and that really gets me in the zone. And sometimes I can enter the flow state, or whatever, as close to the flow state as I'm gonna get, at the drop of a hat once a certain song starts playing. Not having a consistent writing routine, especially while outlining your novel, takes you away from the novel, and then also brings in random ideas and random scenes that might be more difficult to fit in because you're not in tune with what you've been writing, because you haven't written for a week, 2 weeks, 3 days. So much life happens at you and so much different inspiration might hit you that your writing can start to feel choppy because you wrote this section at this point in your life, and then you wrote this section at this point of your life, and then things don't mesh as well. I really believe that if you're more consistent, and if you even had a time of day, or if you just wrote every single day, the moment that your brain sees you open up those files, if you have a certain cup of tea that you drink, or if you put on essential oils, or if you have a certain scent, or you eat a cookie at the same time, those external cues will get your brain working, and just having that consistency alone would improve your writing, not only on a level, a writer level, but on keeping you on track with what you have been writing and keeping you in tune with the story that you've been trying to tell. Regret number 3. Pressure. I regret initially, which I gave up on this, but I still regret it even though I changed up. I regret pressuring myself to complete the templates that I have. Initially when I first started, which if you haven't already, you can watch the video of Jen and I, the other half of Jen Squared, talking about how we became hobby authors. That's the background story. When I started filling out these templates, I felt that I needed to complete these templates before I could move on, regardless of what inspiration I may have had. This went on for a few months, and bear in mind, I didn't have any consistent writing routine. So I was constantly left dissatisfied with the level with which I had completed things. Pause. Kidding. We're good. So I ended up giving up on those character profiles, and then I was left dissatisfied with them, and then I ended up starting my manuscript because I was so desperate to fill out the 3-act story structure, so desperate to fill out scene cards, that I ended up leaving them in the wayside. That's fine. My characters will survive. I will fix her. I will. I have one really annoying character because things just happen to her and she just whines, and that's fine, but they have to happen. So we're working on it. We'll fix her. We'll fix her in post at this point because she's just broken. Okay? I'm sorry. There's 5-ish characters who are in the forefront of this story. And so I've written 3 backstories, which helps me inform myself what their motivations are, why they're in the story, why they matter. And because of that, I was left with 2 characters who are in the forefront of the story, who are just not up to par. And every time I have them in a scene, I feel dissatisfied with where they are at because I gave up on their character template, and I did that because I put too much pressure on myself to fulfill the template's requirements. And then I was desperate to start writing because NaNoWriMo was coming up, and we all know what panic ensues. Essentially, all I'm trying to say is when you force yourself to work on something that you're not inspired to do, and then you don't allow yourself to go backward, and then you try to force it, it doesn't come out right. And then it's inefficient because you're not inspired to write it. And then it's also not as enjoyable because you're sitting there trying to force yourself to work on a template because you think you need to finish it. And then inspiration comes halfway through your manuscript and you have so much more editing to do and revisions, unfortunately. This is a bonus, okay? This is more like a wish. Like, I wish I could change who I am. But unfortunately, having gone from level 1 to potentially level 2, which I won't even give myself that much yet, I don't know how far the levels go up, by the way. Probably a million. I honestly wish I had less ideas of how to improve my novel. I wish that I was completely satisfied with my first outline. I wish that I was completely satisfied with the directions that my scene cards went into. I wish that the countless ideas that I have that are coming into my brain constantly would just stop and stop making me feel really worried because I hope that the editing process doesn't nearly take as long as the writing process has been taking me. If I'm being completely honest, oh my gosh, am I being vulnerable? I'm worried that this is going to end up with all of the ideas that I have. It's going to end up taking a lot more time to revise everything because I'm going to see, as a level 2-ish writer, all of the places that my novel is not as strong as it could be. And the reality is there's probably going to be a point in which that I'm going to have to stop myself and just give up in the revision process and just accept that the level that the novel is at is the level that it's at, and take the lessons that I've learned with me into my future writing projects. That was way more therapeutic than I had anticipated. Getting that off of my chest was pretty nice. I hope that from this you can kind of gather hindsight is 2020. We're never going to perfect our processes. We're always going to be learning and growing and improving. Yes, that's the joy of writing. And instead of trying to look back and be disappointed with my level 1 writing, I'm going to simply be impressed with the fact that there is going to be a novel at the end of this. And wow, that was nice. I regret having bills to pay. I regret I regret having to sleep like 10 hours a night because I'm iron deficient and I refuse to take iron pills to feel well rested. I regret getting car sick when I try to write in a car because it's a long drive and I'm not going anywhere except where we're going. So like it would be perfect if I could just like write right now, but the nausea. I regret having to eat and drink multiple times a day and try to like make it myself and then clean it up. I regret trying to exercise regularly and wasting all my time with that as if having a healthy body was like more important than my writing. Reality is I regret that. Oh, do I regret that this is only a hobby? No. Maybe. Wow. Okay. Like and subscribe if you would like to support Jen and I's journey on YouTube as hobby authors. Leave a comment. What are you working on? What are your regrets? Do you have more experience than I do writing a novel? Tell me about your experience, what you regret about your outlining process, at least in the early days, and how you fixed it, because I'm looking for any advice that I can get to improve and learn and grow and be better. Because what's the point if we're just going to stay stagnant? There's no point. 0 point. Let's do better together. Like and subscribe. Yikes.